Alright, so this is how it looks on stock height. I'm going to give you the measurements right now. Stock fronts are around 33, just under 33. And then on the rear, it's about 34 1/4. So it should be a 1-inch drop and on the front, and then the 2-inch drop in the back. So we'll see what happens with that. Alright, so after we take the wheel off, first thing we're gonna do, or the things we have to do, is take off this upper control arm ball joint. Down here, you're gonna have a 24mm bolt and nut. So there's the nut. And we also got to take off this sway bar from the end link, or else we're going to be fighting it. And then lastly, you got your top mounts, 3 bolts or 3 nuts. Alright, gonna take off the sway bar end link first. It's an 18mm, and on the end of it you're going to want to get an 8mm socket to hold the end link. Alright, with the 8mm socket, I'm going to hold it. I'm going to use my wrench to take off the nut. And there you go, and there's the nut. Now the sway bar end link is out of the way. Now we won't be fighting the sway bar up and down. Alright, this upper control arm bolt, or I'm sorry, nut, is a 21. I'm going to try to zing it off with this impact, and if I'm lucky, it won't catch the threads on the actual ball joint. But if not, you're going to need an Allen key to hold it. So once this is off, I'm just going to bang it with a hammer, and hopefully this control arm just shoots up. Make sure you support the bottom of the control arm, and support this because it's going to want to fall to one way or another. Again, I'm going to use this. Just be ready to catch it. Got it? Yeah. That's what I mean by catching it, because it's pretty heavy, even though it's supported by the lower control arm. But yeah, there you go. There's your upper ball joint. All right, up here, there is 3 nuts, 13mm. We're going to take that off. Make sure you are supporting the bottom control arm so it doesn't just fall. Now I got these 3 nuts off. Put them off to the side. Now down below, we're going to be taking off the lower strut mount. And before you get however deep I am with everything's already disconnected, first thing you should do before taking off any of the suspension, take off those 2 caliper bolts, caliper mount bolts, 21mm, to move the brake caliper to the lower control arm set back there, because right now I got everything disassembled. I can't take off the strut because this upper beam, since it's not connected to the upper control arm, wants to fall and it wants to pull on the brake line. I had my buddy here earlier for the other side, but by yourself it's pretty much impossible because this always wants to flip over. I'm holding it right now with the breaker bar. I'm just waiting for him to get back. But if you're doing it by yourself, take off your caliper and the ABS sensor, which is a 10mm, and put it on the lower control arm before you do anything else over here. So this way, once you get to this step to try to take off the actual shock, you don't have to worry about, like, this can flop over, but at least you're not going to be putting tension on your brake line. Work on the flats. We didn't, and that gave us trouble. So for the other side, we probably spent like 2.5 hours trying to compress the spring get it lined up, and this and that. So yeah, work with the flats, and this way the threads or the head won't be hitting it. And you got to go as far as you can on either side to compress it enough to take off the head of this. Alright, so this one we're going to have to shove in here because it doesn't slide in like other ones that have bigger gaps. So we're going to have to pry up on the sides to be able to get these inside. That took me about a couple minutes, but earlier the threads kept hitting on the top hat. And right now we're perfectly clear from it. So yeah, it's unseated. Now we just got to take this top hat off. For the top one, I got the old cheapy 8mm and I bent it about 45 degrees or so I can get onto the top of the piston. And we're going to use one of these open end sockets, the 21mm, to take off the nut. Alright, so now you got your open end 18mm socket and your modified 8mm wrench. And now we're going to go ahead and hold the piston while we take off the nut. And there you go, you got your nut off. So now we're going to take off the top hat. And there you go. Top hat's off, shocks off. Okay, now that I temporarily installed them to more or less line them up to get me as close as I can with the orientation. The two front ones are on the bottom and the back one is on the top. And you can see right here, it's beveling out to the right from my angle. So I know this is correct. So now I just got to look at this little hump, since I have this oriented correctly, and just more or less have that same situation lined up over here. Same with the bottom of the strut. Has to match the same gap. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and compress it down. It's going to be roughly 10 or so inches when it's compressed to fit in that gap that it's supposed to be, to at least get a thread on to the top of the piston. Now with this death trap ready to go, you get to put your hands on it. So you get to pull it off. Line up the seat right here. With your new attached or supplied bump stop, you're going to put that on. Now go ahead and put your piston in, your shock. You're going to get the nut started once you get a couple threads. You can go ahead and decompress the spring. And there you go. Here's your assembled setup. And now we're just going to use a pry bar, spread these open a little bit, and pull these clamps out. And now with the helper, they're going to hold this whole knuckle assembly, and we're going to go ahead and install the piston or the strut. Alright, now with the top hanging off those nuts, we're gonna jack up the lower control arm until it lines up with the lower part of the strut. If I have the torque spec, I'll put it in the video. If not, go until it bottoms out and give it a quarter turn with at least one of these 1/2-inch wrenches. If not, put a brake bar on it. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and put this nut back on. It's an 18mm nut with a 8mm hex head. Now that we got the end link attached, we'll go ahead and go to the upper control arm. Alright, to get the knuckle to attach with the upper control arm, we're going to have to pry down on the upper control arm while we're jacking up the knuckle, but not too much or else you'll lift up the car. And just enough so we can get the thread on the nut. A little bit, yep, there you go. Get as much as you can with your hands so you don't have to do it with that tool. There it is, that's as tight as it goes. Alright. Now there's tension on that and you're going to have to use a key. I know I zinked it off earlier with the impact, but I'll show you how to do it with the key. Alright, you're going to want a 21mm open socket with the 6mm hex head. For the rears, it's a lot more simple when it comes to putting the spring in, but you gotta take off a lot more stuff. I had to take out all the arms on the other side. This trailing arm, this upper control arm, this toe arm, the shock strut, the end link, and the caliper. Before I take the caliper bracket off, I gotta take off these two upper arms. I'm gonna knock those out. They're 18s on both sides, so I'm just gonna zip them off. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take off this ABS sensor that's attached to it. Go ahead and take off this front traction bar. Same thing, 18 on both sides. Alright, now we can get to the caliper bolts. Alright, on this rear toe arm, 18 on the head, 18 on the nut. Alright, that's off. We're going to get the lower strut mount, 21 on the head, 24 on the nut on the back. Alright, I'm going to zing it off. Here's your bolt. And now we got to take off the end link nut. Now that we got the sway bar end link out, there is nothing holding on to this lower control arm with the axle and knuckle. So now we're going to go ahead and let it fall and pry out whatever we can. Now you can see it's pretty much out. He's going to pry down on the rest of it, take it off the top hat, and slide it under. We're going to retain this top hat, this rubber mount. And there you go, it's out. Alright, here's the new one and the old one side by side. As you can see, they don't line up fully. Even with these somewhat off, this is kind of completely different. And that's why the bottom spins around, so it lines up with wherever it is. But as you can see, this is a progressive spring. Push down on it, I'm going to seat it and get this tab lined up. put the nuts back on the end link. Alright, so this is the final product. He took it out for a drive. There's nothing significant. I don't remember what I said in the start of the video. I'll probably put a caption. So right now, we're at 32 and a half. We're at 32 and a half, but so that's 34, and I believe I said 36 over here. And that's 32 and 3/4, more or less. Just a rough estimate. So I know that for sure used to be higher. We're pretty much even now. And he's gonna buy some Hellcat wheels, and that should fill up the rest of the gap. 22s by 10s with the, what's the year tire? 265/40 series tire. So I'm gonna actually, off camera, I'm gonna do a calculation, see how much taller it's gonna be, but it's gonna actually fill up the wheel gap that it has right now. So this is what's gonna be the difference right now with the 17s that he has OEM. They're 29.4. With the 22s with the 40 series, it's gonna be a 30.3 inch, so about 1 inch taller, and that's gonna make a significant difference on there. And just by chance, my sister ended up driving up, and she has the same vehicle, but she has like the luxury setup or whatever with the aftermarket or with the upgraded wheels. And just for shits and giggles, let's see what hers is at. So hers is about 33 and a half, which is probably half an inch shorter than the OEM in that one, original size. And then the rears are about 34 and a half. So yeah, if this is what you guys wanted to add to your car, by all means, it makes it look better and get some aftermarket wheels with it. Y'all have a good one.